Welcome again to the Brand Ambassador series. Today, Simon Brooking, Laphroaig, Ardmore. We'll start with Islay. Simon, thanks for being here.
Good to be here, Flavio. Always a pleasure to be at the Brandy Library.
Obviously, we're talking about some smoky whiskey here, but it's smoky in a different way, and quite a few elements explain this. Everybody knows Laphroaig,
right?
And yet there's so much more that we can learn.
I think, you know, in a very basic way, I have the advantage of representing Laphroaig and Ardmore, so it's a great comparison, I think, for me, for people to be able to taste, not only taste the whiskies, but also the peat itself. It really is very, I think, illuminating, because when I burn the peat, I'll burn the Highland peat, and the Highland peat is more derivative of coniferous pine trees, whereas the Islay peat is more derivative of seaweed. And I think the most simplest way of describing it is it's the difference between sitting around a campfire in the forest versus sitting around a campfire on the beach. You know, that smoke from what you're burning in the woods, that sweetness that you get from in the woods versus burning the driftwood and you throw some seaweed on there on the beach. That's what you get with Laphroaig. Ardmore, it's more of a piney sweet sap, right, plus the vanilla, the caramel, the floral notes. But Laphroaig is where the land meets the sea. Literally, you know, when you see the distillery, it is right on the coast there. And because of that, but also because of the peat that we're using, there's the earth, plus there's the salt.
So you're harvesting that peat right there?
It's just up the road, right by the Islay airport there. We own peat beds up along there that we've been cutting from. We've got 4 peat cutters who hand cut 200 ton of peat a year. Now that's it at dry weight. When they're cutting it, which is usually in the spring, it's still fairly thick and muddy. So with the water weight, it's probably close to 350 ton a year of peat that they're actually cutting.
They must be healthy guys.
They're big, healthy Scots, the islanders there. They do everything on the island. They're great lads, and they are the bogmen. You know, I mean, you see them coming up out of the bog after a hard day's work, and then they'll go to their other jobs on the island. We all are on Islay. We're all very we multitask quite a bit. We have many different talents and are able to work the stills as well as work the peats. But also, one of the stillmen at Laphroaig is he likes to go cut peats for meditation. He likes to go out there and just be on the land and cut the peats.
I'll tell you what it is. Whatever he says, he's a treasure hunter. He knows that peat preserves things.
Yes.
Bodies, trees. Maybe he's found a few interesting things.
Oh, absolutely. They found in Ireland. They found blocks of butter in the turf there, in the peat bogs, that are hundreds of years old. Now, what blocks of butter are doing in a peat bog, I'm not sure. It's probably after a night at the pub, you know, if you know the Irish there. But completely preserved. And what it is, it's all that organic material that's compressed and all the oxygen is sucked out of it. So it's a vacuum, it's an organic vacuum, and then it preserves whatever goes into the peat bogs. We have long talked about the restorative nature of whiskies, of single malt scotches, right, and particularly from the islands, they talk about the medicinal properties. Right. You know, it keeps you young. I should know. I'm 70 years old, so.
And I'm 80. And let's take some of that preventive cure.
Shall we do it? Yeah.
But we're talking about many different marks here. Some are new. Of course, everybody knows that staple of Laphroaig, 10 years.
Yeah.
The quarter cask, that is not a new thing anymore. There's the 10 years cask strength. There's the 18 and, well, the 25.
Yes.
We used to have the 15, but that was replaced a couple of years ago. We'll talk about this.
Right.
If we have to start, where do we start in the tasting?
Well, traditionally I'll start with the 10-year because that's the staple. That's the #1 selling Islay single malt. It is world renowned and for its complexity, for its simplicity. You know, there's a real beautiful balance between those two. Just because it's older doesn't necessarily mean it's better for you.
Right.
I mean, and I think here at Brandy Library, you really show the range of everything that's here, so people can choose from the diaspora of spirits that are available in the world, with the cognacs and the whiskies. You get to see the range. But what I thought I'd bring today were some of the more unusual, the lesser known Laphroaigs, the rarer bottlings. As you were saying, quarter cask has really become a staple for us now. And the 15-year was, but then we decided to stop producing the 15 to produce the 18-year for a couple of reasons. Mainly, we felt like we could compete against the other 18-year-old single malts in the market. 18 years seems to be a benchmark year. Although I have a lot of people who really enjoy that 15-year.
I did enjoy the 15 years.
It's a slightly different style. To me, the 15-year compares with the 30-year, the old 30-year Laphroaig. They have some really lovely, delicate, feminine qualities to those bottlings. What you're going to see in the Laphroaig these days is a little bit more of the muscle. The 18 years bottled at 48% ABV, 96 proof, as well as the 25 years at 102, which is pretty big. It's got a lot of layers to it because we're using bourbon and sherry casks. But what we have here today is bottlings that are using either exclusively bourbon barrels or a combination of up to 3 different barrels, with one of our newest is triple wood.
But it didn't used to be solely sherry cask in a long time ago, or a lot of sherry, but in the maturation?
Absolutely. It was actually, prior to Prohibition, the majority of the barrels that we were using at Laphroaig were sherry casks, because that was what was available. The sherry was coming up from Spain. They were being emptied. We can reuse the barrels. So, and then because of after Prohibition, there was a law that went into effect saying you could only use a bourbon barrel here once in America. So perfect for us in Scotland, because we don't want to use a brand new barrel. There's too many tannins in the wood. So send those new barrels up to us and we can reuse them. I thought it was a congressman with a vested interest in the timber industry, but actually it was the American Cooper Union, the barrel makers. Want to make sure it was work for themselves. And the great thing for us today is that we have an almost unlimited resource of really, really top quality wood for aging our whiskies in today. I think it's one of the reasons today that we are more consistent in our bottlings is because of the quality of the wood from the American bourbon industry. We're able to gauge and predict the outcome of our agings, because we have a pretty good idea after 10 years, after 18 years, what our whiskey is going to be tasting like. Now, that's not always necessarily true. There are anomalies, and that's the beautiful thing about whiskey, you know, about single malt scotches, is that every barrel is its own unique treasure, and sometimes they are not going to react predictably. And they really, you find some new flavors and some new layers and a whole new experience with it. The Carchus that we have, this is a great example of a festival bottling. But this was not from a single barrel. This came from 48 Maker's Mark bourbon barrels. It's, if you notice the color, it's a much lighter Laphroaig in comparison to your standard, and that's because it comes from the first floor of the dunnage warehouses. And the dunnage warehouses are the earthen floors, big thick stone brick walls. So when you have it on the first floor of the warehouse, you're not getting a lot of interaction with the wood. And so that's why the whiskies that we pulled for this bottling are lighter in terms of the color. This is an 8-year-old, and from 48 Maker's Mark bourbon barrels, it yielded 350 cases, about 1,500 bottles of Laphroaig. And
all of that is just consumed. Most of this is consumed during that festival.
The majority, there is a great. There's a lot of it is sold during the festival, but we also are interested in bringing some of that over to the US in particular. The US is a great market for us, and we want to be able to bring bottlings to the United States to make available to the US, particularly because we are unable to ship whiskey to North America. And so what we've been interested in doing the past few years is make some of these limited bottlings available to the Friends of Laphroaig in the Friends of Laphroaig program.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about this while we're tasting the first one, the Friends of Laphroaig.
Shall we taste a little bit of the Carchus here?
Sure.
Since that's a perfect segue. Friends of Laphroaig, what the Friends of Laphroaig are is when you buy a bottle of Laphroaig, there is a tube. In the tube, there's a brochure, and that brochure, there's a code on the back. Well, when you go onto the Laphroaig website, you put that code in on the website, and then we're going to send you a certificate making you the proud landowner of a square foot of land on the island of Islay. So you come to visit your plot, we'll put you in a pair of welly boots, give you a flag from your country, shove you out into the field, and you go find your plot and stake your claim for your clan and your country. It's a great program, keeps you in touch with what's going on in the distillery, and I do special events for Friends of Laphroaig globally. So you get invitations whenever I'm in the area to come to that. And if the economy tanks here, you know, you got a place to live in Scotland, you know. So
yeah, go sleep on a square foot.
Well, with a bottle of Laphroaig nestled in your...
Sure, well, if you've got a bottle of Laphroaig in your hand, that you'll feel much better. You'll be able to face that Islay weather. So, Carchus, it's pronounced Carchus, and it means hospitality, friendship in the Gaelic language. This is the Elach edition. Folks from the island of Islay are known as Elachs. And John Campbell, our distillery manager who chose the barrels, he is an Elach. So this is his edition. This is the 2011. And Slán Java. Cheers. The interesting thing I think about this bottling is that for a young Laphroaig, this is an atypical Laphroaig. People expect this to be big, massively smoky the way the 10-year is, and it really backs off on it. It's interesting to see as the Laphroaig is aging through the years, in the younger years, it goes through some very drastic changes. This whiskey at 7 years old is hugely smoky, and then you start. As expected. Yeah, yes, but then in the 8th year, it backs off, and you start to get a lot less of the smoke and some more of the sweetness. There's even a hint of some mint in this deep inside there, and then you get back to 10 years again, and the smoke comes back. So these barrels, as they breathe. You know, we always talk about them breathing out the smoke and the heat, but sometimes they pull it back in again, and it's a bit of a roller coaster ride. But when you get to the 25, for example, which is magnificent, you've got a different kind of smoke. It's still there. It has not vanished.
No.
But it shows in a different way. So, what happens to that?
Well, we were talking about sherry earlier on. And prior to Prohibition, we were using the sherry casks. So one of the things we've actually received feedback from Friends of Laphroaig is that they would like more of a pre-Prohibition style Laphroaig. So that is why we have the 25-year available, and as well as the triple wood, because triple wood is quarter cask plus 2 years old or also sherry. So it's bringing a little bit of that traditional early 1900s Laphroaig into the mix.